Hey guys, welcome to the video for Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. My name is Ventus, and in this Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree build video guide, I'm going to show you a build that is so strong that I literally no longer fear anything in Elden Ring at all. DLC or base game, it doesn't matter. This build is literally dropping everything. And it all centers around one incredibly broken Ash of War called Spinning Gravity Thrust. Now, really quickly, before I show you the builds, do me a favor and sub to the channel with notifications on. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so first, to get this Ash of War, you need to take it off of a weapon that a Remembrance boss drops. The boss I'm talking about is Gaius. He is the boss that you fight behind Shadowkeep. Specifically, he's located right outside the Shadowkeep back gate Site of Grace. Once you defeat him, take his remembrance to the finger reader at the Table of Lost Grace and get his weapon, not the spell, from the remembrance. Once you have the weapon, you can actually take it to the Table of Lost Grace right there and remove the Ash of War that's on it, Spinning Gravity Thrust, and apply it to any other weapon, as long as it's a large or colossal sword. So far, I've tried it on a few colossal great swords, the one great katana, and the Godskin Stitcher, and my favorite weapon to use it on by far is the Watchdog's greatsword. This Ash of War has to be the best Ash of War in the game right now, because literally with a button press, your character hops into the air and dives down on your locked on target with a spinning corkscrew attack that drills a hole into them, hitting them several consecutive hits in a row. And after you're done with the first corkscrew, you can actually press the button again while you're still in the air and drill another hole. Listen. Add in the right talisman like the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia Talisman and a few others, which I'll talk about in just a minute, you are doing a ridiculous amount of damage, which, if I'm being honest, makes the entire DLC kind of easy. I mean, don't get me wrong, you still have to learn boss mechanics and attack patterns and such, but for some bosses and some of their phases, all you literally have to do is get close to them and spam this attack. Now, what makes this especially cool is that you can basically have super armor while you're doing this attack. Poise. So if you have the health to tank whatever attack is being thrown at you, you're going to continuously attack your target, basically ignoring whatever they're doing. Now, this build can go so many different ways because of the different affinity choices there are. I personally have been using the bleed affinity because with my current build and stats, I get a 166 blood loss buildup, which is insane, and because of the corkscrew Ash of War hitting so many times back to back, and then again back to back, the blood loss buildup happens extremely fast, making fights with anything an absolute cakewalk. Now, when it comes to weapons, I choose to use the Watchdog's Greatsword over the basic Colossal Greatsword simply because the Colossal Greatsword has a B scaling in strength, while the Watchdog has an A scaling, which means it gets more attack power. However, the blood loss buildup is basically the same. And it's basically the same logic with the Great Katana as well. The Watchdog just hits harder. However, the Great Katana is a slashing weapon, and some enemies, like dragons, are just weaker overall to slashing weapons. So when it comes to the right weapon to use, pick what makes the most sense for your specific fight, or whatever you personally prefer. Now for the rest of the build. This is primarily going to be a Strength Arcane build, so those are the stats you should make the highest. My character is level 261 right now, so showing you my stats would be kind of pointless, but what I can say to you is this. Have a high strength so you can get the most damage out. Do not neglect your mind because the Spinning Gravity Thrust, while cheap with its cost at 26 FP plus 12 more for the additional input, all of that can add up. Using the Filigree Crest Talisman can help with that by cutting some of the FP cost, but honestly, I just put a little something in your mind because the attack is the main focus of the build and you have to be able to do the attack. Endurance doesn't have to be super high, but even at 50, I do have to take a second to let my green bar fill back up sometimes. Vigor should be high as well, the highest stat of them all if I'm being honest, so you can tank the hits. I don't feel comfortable having anything less than 60 in my Vigor using this build. Dexterity and Intelligence can be pretty low too, just make sure you have enough Dexterity to wield the weapon that you're using this with. The Watchdog Greatsword has a Dexterity requirement of 10, the Great Katana has a requirement of 18. Faith I always keep at least at 38 or 40 so I can cast the requisite buff incantations, and have Arcane as high as you possibly can with whatever you have left if you're going to bleed build route. When it comes to talisman combinations, the options are numerous and it's not going to be a one set fits all sort of thing with this build. A few options to consider are the new two-handed sword talisman to increase two-handed weapon attack power. The Shard of Alexander should be one that you try to use every single time. Rotten Wing Sword Insignia is actually very good with this build, but since you can use the Thorny Crack tier in your physic that basically does the same thing, you can choose not to have it on your build in favor of something else that adds either more offensive or defensive power. Lord of Blood's Exaltation is a good pick if you are doing a bleed build, and the Ritual Sword Talisman can also add a bit more power to your attacks. For some protection, I use the Dragon Crest Talisman as a standard defense unless the boss I'm fighting has a specific element type, and if that's the case, I'll use the talisman that protects against that specific element. When zone clearing, especially in the DLZ zones, I like using Godskin Swaddling, which restores HP with successive attacks, Taker's Cameo, which restores HP after defeating an enemy, and the Ancestral Spirit's Horns restore FP after defeating an enemy. Now, when it comes to the armor to use with this build, it's kind of wishy-washy right here, right? Because I want to tell you the Rakshasa armor set because it increases your damage output, so that's really good. However, the nature of this build's ability to tank through damage, to deal damage, kind of makes using Rakshasa's armor a little on the dumb side, because with Rakshasas, you take more damage than normal from regular attacks. So I would advise testing the waters when it comes to Rakshasa's armor with this build specifically. Otherwise, use something sturdy that adds to your poise. For headgear, there are a few options here as well. The white mask is an obvious choice if you're doing a bleed build, or you could go for something that raises your strength or arcane like one of the imp heads. The new Fire Knight helm is actually pretty good because it raises your HP, stamina, and max equipment load. The Death Mask helm reduces the FP used to summon spirits, and that's good for this build to help conserve FP if you're using Spirit Ashes. For the mixed physic, the combination that I've found the most useful with this build is going to be the Opaline Hard tier and the Opaline Bubble tier. They both offer damage negation. Now, if you choose to use only one of these, it doesn't matter. Either one of them are fine. You can just use whatever. Other options to consider would be the Thorny Crack tier, like I said earlier, to make consecutive attacks grow stronger, or the Stone Barb tier to make stance breaking just a little bit easier. Alright guys, and that's going to be it for this build video. If it was helpful in any way, I'd really appreciate your like on the video. For more guides and builds, head to my channel and check out my playlist for Elden Ring videos that you may have missed. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.